Well, thank you all for coming. I seem to remember we were here last week, but I don't know. That may be just deja vu. Let's see if we can get something done today. Okay, so welcome to today's full council meeting. Welcome to members of the public who are attending in the public gallery, maybe not. Those in the conference hall, again, maybe not, and those watching this meeting via our YouTube channel. For those in the building, I'd like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure. Please leave the chamber by the nearest exit and congregate by the cathedral. As chair of this meeting, I would like to remind everyone to treat each other with due courtesy, tolerance and respect. Disruption to this meeting will not be tolerated, and if the disruption is continued, I will have no choice but to adjourn the meeting. And can I just ask to make sure your phones are on silent, please? Okay, so agenda item 2, I have apologies for absence from Councillors Alexander, Bartle, Bennett, Davis, English and Parsons. Are there any other apologies? No? Fabulous. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest on today's agenda? No? Thank you again. So, agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. They've been circulated. I move that the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 20th of February 2024 be agreed as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'd like to second those.
Thank you very much. Can I take it that the minutes are agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 5, Lord Mayor's business. Just one item, a sad item. Council notes the sad news that former councillor Jane Painter has recently passed away. Jane served Brislington West from 1994 to 1997 and Knoll from 1999 to 2003. I'd like to invite Councillor Helen Holland to say a few words in remembrance.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. And Richard, last week you made the speeches about Alan Tasker and Nigel Curry, and Jane was missed off that list, which was unfortunate, but it has given me the chance to remember her today. There are some people, when you go to their funeral and you find out much more about the person than the person that you knew, and that was certainly the case at Jane's funeral a couple of weeks ago, which was absolutely packed out, which said something about that reach that she had. She wasn't just a councillor in Brislington and in Knoll, as you've said, Lord Mayor, but also her roots were very much in the trade union movement. She worked for decades, I think, at Tesco in Brislington, and she was a shop steward there. She was very, very, very well known in the community. And just anybody who remembers Jane will first of all remember her absolutely flaming red hair. And also, I was just going to read to you a message that Dawn Pomerolo, our former MP in Bristol South, when she heard about Jane, and she said, she was so full of fun, irreverent and sharp, and I thought that actually you couldn't sum Jane up better than that. She was a fixture, really, in Knoll and Brislington. Everybody knew her. Everybody knew her children. George, her son, I've been in close contact with since Jane left, and they are really feeling the loss of their mum and grandma. She was just a force of nature, I think, and I think probably the council would have benefited from her for being here longer. But those 2 terms that she served were, as Dawn said, full of fun. She could always see the funny side of things, and she could always get a laugh from most situations. But at heart, she was a community activist, a trade unionist, and a very proud socialist. Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holland. Okay, agenda item 6, the public forum. Within the Constitution, there is no provision for public forum at the budget meeting. However, as indicated on the agenda, it has been agreed that petitions and written statements about the reports on this agenda could be submitted to this meeting. Details of the petitions and statements received have been published on our website. No petitions and one statement was received by the deadline. A list will be displayed on the screen. The statements have been circulated to councillors and the Mayor prior to this meeting, and I now ask the full council to note the statement. Thank you. So, moving on to agenda item 7, Budget Report 2024-25. So, on the 20th of February, full council met to consider the budget proposed by the Mayor and considered the 4 amendments submitted by councillors. The Conservative capital amendment was carried. All other amendments fell. This resulted in an amended budget, which the Mayor indicated at the meeting that he was willing to accept. Members voted against that amended budget, resolving to refer proposals back to the Mayor. The Mayor exercised his right to take 5 working days to submit alternative proposals to the Council, which were published on Monday the 26th of February. We will be considering the altered budget today, which will require a simple majority to pass. Any other proposals raised at this meeting will require a 2/3 majority to pass. I'd like to refer members to the budget procedure document, which was published in the agenda papers and available on the website. For ease of reference, a paper copy of the procedure has been placed in the public gallery. As this procedure technically varies from our standing orders, please can I ask full council to formally agree to suspend the relevant standing orders which relate to the policy and budget framework. All those in favour? Thank you. I'd now like to ask the Chief Finance Officer to confirm the outcome of the first budget meeting and advise Council of the requirements for this meeting.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think you've summarised it perfectly, so I don't have anything further to add, and also guidance was circulated to all members in relation to the importance of this, the second meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I'd now like to ask Mayor Rees to introduce, summarise and move the altered budget. Marvin, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I mean, 2 things just before I go into my report today. First off is that I went into the last cabinet, the budget meeting, with a commitment to accept whatever budget came out of the negotiations following amendments that happened between councillors, which is why we repeatedly said it was down to your over to you in that session and allowed you to debate it. I'm just minded of something that was said and is often joked about amongst councillors as well, sometimes, that full council is a place for theatre and pantomime. The challenge is that while that may have become a bit of a habit, we are not in a pantomime situation. We are in a very real financial crisis around us. The cost of living crisis is real. The needs of our population are growing up in this actual world. So it's important that we actually operate in that real world. And having said that, that is my platform to thank those councillors who have committed to work collaboratively, to come together, across difference. And I'm looking at, I know Mark has worked very incredibly hard with Tom. I think Jos has been in those conversations as well. So thank you for those who have come together in the name of collaboration in the city's greater good to agree on a budget that we can bring today. It's also incredibly timely that this morning the LGI report came out, the State of Local Government Finance in England 2024. And I'm going to share a few things from that. If any of you were listening to Radio 4 this morning, you'd have heard the 2 lead stories talk about the state the country is in. The report sets out that high inflation alongside the rising need for council services has compounded the impact of central government funding cuts. This is a analysis shared by local governments of all persuasions. So even for councils that manage to balance the books, there are concerns that some services they provide may fall below legal standards. And these are I'm just sharing with you the national findings. The LGI report itself states, and I'm going to ask you to remember these numbers, 90, 70, 50, 90. 90% of residents nationwide will pay more in council tax and fees, and nearly 70% will see reduced services. 50%, nearly half of senior council leaders warn their councils are likely to go bust during the next parliament. 90% plan to increase fees in areas such as parking and environmental waste, and the same proportion plan to raise council tax, with 1/5 continuing to sell publicly owned assets. It is a challenging situation for local government. Add to this that according to Auditor Grant Thornton, 127 local authorities will have reserves of less than 5% of their annual budget by 2028.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to sum up, please.
Okay, there you go. So just to say, it is a incredibly challenging situation for us. That is the real world we are in, and it is the only world in which we have to operate and in which we have to balance our budget. I would just add on, if I could just be a little bit cheeky, Lord Mayor, it sheds light on the achievement of passing 8 balanced budget. Today, it is your job to negotiate amongst yourselves to make sure that we have a budget for this city by the time we leave this meeting. And I thank you to those again who are willing to work collaboratively to make that happen.
Thank you, Marvin. Sorry, you only had 3 minutes. That's why I had to stop you. I'd like to ask Councillor Cheney now, Cabinet Member for Finance, Governance and Performance, to second the altered budget. And again, you've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I won't take more than 3 minutes. I said much of what I wanted to say last week, and I don't intend to repeat myself today. But firstly, I do want to reiterate the thanks to all those who worked with us collaboratively in creating this altered budget. The key changes of which are moving around some CAS funding to deliver £2 million to help with subsidised buses and other transport measures, defer the increase in district car park charges for a year, and to move funding out to area committees to spend on their transport priorities. The other key change is to reduce funding for the Bristol Design Team, which will delay the inflationary increase in allotment fees planned for 24-25. I want to thank the finance team in particular for turning around the changes so quickly, and I just want to take a moment to thank Denise for all of her hard work over the past 7 years. The people of Bristol don't know how lucky they are to have had you here for all that time. And to add a personal note, thank you. And I just add a personal note to thank you for supporting me through all of this over those years. So thank you, Denise. Good luck at what you do next.
Thank you very much, Craig. And Paul is fine, honestly. Don't worry about that. Anyway, each party group will now in turn respond to the budget proposals, and there is a maximum time allocation of 3 minutes each. So first off, I'd like to call on Councillor Edwards to speak on behalf of the Green Group, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Cheney and thank Denise on behalf of the Green Group for all her work and all the other officers who've worked on this process as well. I actually agree with some of what Marvin has just said about last time being a bit of a pantomime, and that we should be focusing on the most vulnerable people in the city and what this austerity budget is going to do to them. And that really is the focus. It's not about the little amendments, it's about what austerity is doing. And it would be nice to say that a lot has changed in this week since we met to debate the last budget, but looking at adult social care, protecting the city's most vulnerable people, that has not been addressed. This remains an austerity budget that leaves many people worried about their future and many people feeling vulnerable. And we know it's nice to hear that you were all in discussions. We were not invited to the table, even though we raised those particular concerns. And Labour has chosen to negotiate with the party of austerity instead. So what is being brought back today is the same budget, but with some minor amendments that won't work, and in some cases can't even be implemented. And it doesn't have to be like this, and we really sincerely hope that this is the last budget where this is the case. In the last week, other councils, such as North Somerset and Stroud, they've passed budgets with parties working together, Labour working with Green, and we really hope that this is the future and this is what the committee system will give us. The Tory amendments that have been made to this budget in no way reassure us, unfortunately. While additional funding for parks and buses sound worthy, and we agree that they are deserving of extra funding, as does saving allotments from fee hikes, these particular amendments are just fantasy. Spending CAS monies on roads and relieving parking charges may sound like a good idea to some, but the government set rules for what CAS money can be spent on. And this includes supporting the maintenance of infrastructure to promote active travel and public transport use. So it would be a very broad interpretation to use it for potholes and pure fantasy to use it for parking. And when it comes to allotments, we can't help but feel that the issues around allotments could have been solved a long time ago. Previous incremental rises in line with inflation that were agreed on in 2018 and would have protected the service have not happened, meaning that allotment services have been brought to their knees. Trying to protect allotments from a 6% raise via a budget amendment when the Cabinet papers coming next week approve soaring charges in 2025 anyway seems fruitless. So looking forward, we want to see parks and allotment strategy be developed, and we want to see it with proper input from communities and allotment holders to make sure those two important areas get the right support they need to thrive. And in terms of finding more money to improve public transport and active travel, the Green Group previously brought ideas to this chamber to find funds for a workplace parking levy, something we'd still like to explore in the future. Surely a longer-term strategy that has a proven track record of raising funds is a better solution than attempting to take funds from a ring-fenced pot that is already facing a cliff edge.
Could I ask you to sum up,
Yep.
please? Thank
So
you.
unfortunately for us, there has not been enough changes made to vote for this budget as our concerns remain, but we do look forward to working much closer with other parties under the new committee system, and we hope that they will join us in challenging austerity measures wherever possible.
Thanks, Emma. I'd now like to ask Councillor Renard on behalf of the Labour Group to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So here we are for round two. Today we must nail our colours to the mast and reach agreement. There is a lot at stake. I remain proud that Labour's putting forward a balanced budget that remains ambitious for Bristol while protecting frontline services. It's a budget that protects people from the worst effects of austerity. We've also made some changes in response to offered solutions. Funding brought forward for supported buses, money sooner for local transport schemes with local decision-making on prioritisation, charging for district car parks deferred, freezing of allotment fees for a further year. We also continue to back additional investment for parks and playgrounds. And only yesterday we announced where over £1 million of investment will be going to refurbish 9 playgrounds across the city that are on housing land. As a reminder, Bristol City Council has had millions from its budget cut in real terms since 2010. The cost of statutory services like adult social care, children's services and temporary accommodation continues to rise and is getting worse. It leaves little for discretionary spending. It means every pound is having to stretch further and further. But let's remind ourselves what this budget does. Frontline services protected. A fifth of libraries across the UK have closed their doors permanently. None of them are in Bristol. We're bucking the trend and investing millions into a world-class youth zone for South Bristol. The council tax reduction scheme, protected. The only major city in the UK to offer up to 100% discount on the worst off council tax bills. It's no mean feat doing this, given the cost of 43 million next year. We're not in politics to make excuses. We're here to make a difference. We're here to do the right thing, talk up our city, address its challenges. It is a budget that strikes the right balance. It is a budget that is fiscally responsible. It is a budget that everyone should be able to get behind. No dither and delay, no avoiding taking responsibility with the offer of excuses. We had a failure to offer alternative solutions from one party, and recently a council storming out of one of the last committee model working group meetings, hardly an advert for so-called promises of collaboration. Hopefully we'll see a better standard today and going forward. Let's step up today, do right by the people of Bristol, set the balanced budget that has been worked on for countless hours, that all parties have had the opportunity to input into for many months. This is a budget for all, a budget that invests in the basics, protects the most vulnerable in our city, and invests in the future of our citizens. It is ambitious, it is bold, it will help to bring prosperity. It is a budget for a bolder Bristol with a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'd now like to call on Councillor Mark Weston to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I do love this. We weren't invited to the table. We had a meeting last week. You brought nothing to said table. Not a thing. You don't like the budget? Try and amend it. Not a jot. People brought forward ideas. They wanted things they wanted to see. The budget wasn't good. It's still not great, but it's better. But at least try and amend it. Be part of the discussion. You don't just shout at the sidelines. But with that said, comrades.
Steady on.
Steady on, yeah.
Got a form for you.
I look forward to burning it. Budget process is always a strange beast because there is that whole pantomime, as we've said. The first meeting allows you to air your view of what you think the budget should be. It gives you a flavour of where you want the budget to go. It allows all the theatrics and everything else that we love and adore, and I'm sure the public never grow weary of. But there is also that legal obligation that councillors have to do where we have to set a budget. Because the alternative, the council not setting a budget, is someone else coming in and setting it for us. So all the discretionary things that we want will be set by someone that has no idea about Bristol. I mean, a regular complaint in my ward is that, our traffic and transport plans are devised by someone that doesn't live in North Bristol. Now imagine trying to have our budget set by someone that has no idea how the city works at all. That is the dilemma we face if we don't pass a budget. So the pantomime stuff has to be settled, and then the pragmatic politics needs to begin. And this is the second meeting, and this is what we're going to do now. Now, the budget today isn't perfect. It isn't. It isn't the budget that we would set. It's not the budget you would set. It's not the budget any of us would set in an ideal world. But after the discussions that we've had, and I thank Councillor Reynard, Rippington and Cheney, we are prepared to support it in light of the concessions and the improvements that we believe have been made, and we would urge people to do so. So it does have additional money brought forward for regards buses, traffic schemes, road maintenance, the support for additional transport, sustainable transport, the cancellation of this year's allotment fee hike. You are right, more needs to be done. There's a big one coming next year. We'll look at that in next year's budget. I agree with you on that one. I think we're going to have to do little and often, but I agree where you're coming from on it. And we also have the deferring of the parking charge of district car parks. At a time when we really should be supporting our neighbourhood and district shopping centres, those are a real blow. So I'm happy and delighted that that's been deferred for a year. We'll have that fight again next year, of course. And so we'll say, with that in mind, we will support it. However, I want to flag just one thing. When we're starting to look at how this additional money is going to be spent via the new area committees that comes through, on the new traffic schemes, I think we need to bear in mind there are large portions of the city, those area committees, that don't get a lot of SIL. They actually get a lot of development. They can get things like council houses, they get care homes. None of that actually attracts SIL. They do their obligation to the city, but they get nothing back from that. So I would suggest that when we look at it, I'm finishing up, my Lord Mayor, I promise, when we look at how we distribute it, we look at areas like, well, Stockwood is a good example, we look at those areas which don't attract that level of SIL, and we redistribute fairly. With that said, we'll support the budget. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I'd like to now ask Councillor Clark to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I would first like to thank the Labour Group for reaching out to myself and the Conservative Group to work together in partnership to find some resolution. We appreciated their desire to work cross-party. However, after initial conversation, we had no further communication with the Labour Group, which frankly was a bit of a shame. And literally the first we knew about the alterations to the budget were when they were published, which is a bit of a pity. We would have preferred a bit more of dialogue with you, but that's just how it is. We do appreciate that we have some movement on supported buses, which our residents should see some benefit from. But I'm a little concerned that the devil is in the detail, and it's a bit of a shame that we did not have enough time to fully investigate the implications of the changes to the text. The inference of the wording gives us concern and the impact on this budget for future year's delivery. My group were disappointed to see that there was no mention of any support for the library service, and residents across the city will be disappointed as it appears to be witnessing the library's closure by stealth at the moment, and our amendment sought to stop that. One point I wanted to raise, and will concern people because of possible mixed messaging or unfortunate sequencing, is the allotment charging proposals, which are in the revised budget, but we've also got the paper which was published yesterday, which kind of slightly contradicts each other, but I'm hoping that the cabinet papers for the 5th of March will be largely become redundant as a result of today's decision. But anyway, people, members of the public reading that could be slightly concerned, having seen that being published yesterday. In summary, the Liberal Democrat group were prepared to work with other groups to find a solution, but in reality, this didn't quite happen. And to misquote Councillor Bennett, who I know is not here, it would be really easy for us to accuse the Labour group of jumping into bed with the Conservative group by yielding to their demands, but far from me saying such a thing, obviously. I suppose the elephant in the room here today has to be the Green Group. Because of their petulant behaviour last week, they have left themselves without any power to negotiate or lacking any influence in this whole process. Perhaps that needs to be a learning point for them to take away with them in terms of budget setting next year and the process. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Josh. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Hopkins to speak on behalf of the Knoll Community Party.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome some of the changes that have been put forward here. Particularly important to us and our constituents are the improvements in money for supported bus services and also for investment into parks. Those two are key for us. Some of the other matters we could possibly not entirely agree with. I think, though, it's important that we make certain that the detail is actually right. We have a major development, which I mentioned before, which has been held up in our ward by opposition, and exactly will produce £4 million worth of sill. I was told some little while ago by the chief legal officer that once the agreement had gone through, once the planning permission had gone through, that Redcatch Park, our main park, would benefit or potentially benefit from investment of strategic sill. The situation is now confusing, and I hope that I can get some reassurance that Redcatch will be able to participate in that, some of that strategic sill, which seems now to be on its way. It is absolutely vital. The scheme, the plan will eventually go ahead, although it may well be delayed for some while because of some opposition. But that's absolutely vital for our community. The park is well used. It will get good value, any investment there, because local volunteers help to give good value to anything spent in that park. So I would hope I can get some reassurance on that matter for Redcatch Park. Ironic that the two parties who actually made it possible for the scheme to go ahead are actually cooperating on the budget proposals now. And the two parties who tried to stop the scheme are apparently not supporting the budget. So that's the first thing. We are in a position also to look at the bus services. I hope I will get cooperation from the Fulwood councillors. An absolute priority for the new administration is a bus service that runs through Knoll and Fulwood and reaches South Bristol Community Hospital. It is tragic that communities are cut off from the local hospital in a way that they actually are, and I would hope that members in Fulwood, the new ones, will work with us to make certain that that scheme is actually delivered. It will require very little subsidy because of the new development going in and because of the new secondary school that is actually being built. So it will be almost commercial and doesn't require a huge amount of money, but there will be a good use of some of that money that's been put aside, hopefully, in this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I'd now like to call on Councillor Heather Mack to speak on behalf of the Green Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I have some things to say from last week, unsurprisingly. Talking about amendments. In 2022, we submitted a whole load of amendments that were passed by full council to be rejected by the Mayor or included in the budget, and we followed up. I don't know if other parties do this, but we've really followed up, and they haven't happened. They've just disappeared into the ether. So we were like, this is a game, as Mark Weston repeatedly said last week. It is a game. We put in amendments to make leaflet fodder. We're playing a game. So we decided to not play that game, because supposedly you've got to play that game in order to be able to negotiate. No, we had things we would have negotiated on. We're just not playing that game. Well, the Lib Dems did play your game, and then you ghosted them. So I wonder if they really think that they've got anything from playing that game. And I guess the Tories are claiming victory from playing the game, but we've been through the amendments. And I kind of think that they've been had in terms of what difference these amendments are making. CAS is supposedly moving money forwards, except the service response says if we have resource, and we know we can't get any resource that quickly in the transport team, and we can't have a new supported bus service where we have no resource in a year. So I'm not sure that amendment adds up to anything. So ultimately, this deal is for show, and I understand you need some leaflet fodder, so you've got your show. That we want deeper, proper collaboration and working together, not that we'll give you a few lines in the budget right now, and that is what we will have in the future. And we really are. I know the antagonism that is in this room, and I don't want this antagonism in the future. I really do hope working differently in this committee model. I know that's hard when we're in this room to believe that and to think about that. But ultimately, these amendments don't make significant difference to the budget as I see it. I was against this budget last week. I feel the same. I think that there are points of it that is really cruel. I also think that some of the savings are just cannot happen without serious pain to the people in Bristol. And I know local authority is in a dire situation. I think the Mayor gave a very, very persuasive, very good speech earlier to really point out the situation there. And I know the blame for that falls largely with the Conservatives, but we also need to touch on how money has been spent locally and decisions that would have been made, the money on Bristol Energy, consultants' fees, massive payoffs and the Beacon, and also how we're concentrating on what we are here for and protecting those who rely on our services. And I'm really concerned that this administration have been blinded by vanity projects and personal ambition. And if you look at our areas of crisis, and you look at how the administration could have been working with the people of Bristol, working with Bristolians. So if we look at SEND provision, if we were working with parents and carers and not the aggression that exists there, the costs that could have been saved there. And during budget scrutiny, a cabinet member claimed that no children would suffer from the 20 million planned savings to SEND provision.
Could you sum up, please, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. We've just had the Labour leader repeating the Tory mantra of fiscal responsibility and not mentioning people or suffering or cuts. And I just wondered, did you never hope for more or for change or for really properly funded public service and fighting for that, with the Labour future government are not promising to fund it? And we have to be arguing and fighting. And I just feel like this is Labour complicity with Tory austerity. So it's been, what we have now has been made a collaboration between Conservative
I've got to ask you to finish, please, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to call on Councillor Helen Holland to speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I'm not going to make the same speech I would have made last Tuesday before the intervention by my colleague, Councillor Pearce. But I am speaking on behalf of the budget and on behalf of the Labour Group, but as the Cabinet member responsible for 200 million of that spend. And I think it's important that we think about that. And I want to start with thanks to those people on resources scrutiny and people scrutiny who have really looked hard at the plans that we've got at the transformation process in adult social care and have taken the trouble to work through those huge issues with us. And I have to say, at those meetings, no alternative strategy has ever been proposed. In fact, one of the Green Party members at the last People's Scrutiny thanked us for the way that we were working through those challenges. So I really regret the language used last week by the leader of the Green Group. inflammatory terms like using the term warehousing when she must know perfectly well there never has been a plan to warehouse, I think it's a disgusting term, to warehouse people in Bristol. And the term that she's used, and I've looked back over it many times over the intervening days, the cruel and unrealistic cuts to adult social care, she called it. I think words matter. And when people hear those words, cruel and unrealistic, our service users hear that and it suppresses demand because what they think is that we won't be able to meet their needs and there's no point contacting us. Cruel and unrealistic, your words, when their families, friends, carers, our staff hear those words being used, what they think is that we can't meet their needs. And for our staff who are working flat out to meet the needs of vulnerable people, they are disgusted that you use that language. And our health and care partners in both the statutory and voluntary sector who are working so hard finding innovative ways to meet people's needs, they hear your language and they are disgusted by it. So I'll tell you what's cruel and unrealistic and irresponsible is pretending that there's another way to deal with this issue, pretending that that's what you could do and that there's an alternative. So the facts are these. In both cash and percentage terms, we're spending more on adult social care, more than in previous years. We're serving more people, those people who are dependent on our support, and more of those people are supported in their own homes, not in care settings, than ever before. So what I'd like to do is to invite the leader of the Green Group to withdraw those awful words, cruel and unrealistic cuts in adult social care, and admit that together, alongside every other local authority with the same challenges in adult social care, that we have to find a way of doing it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I'd now like to call on Councillor Steve Smith to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Feels a bit odd standing up to support a Labour budget, but it's always nice to build bridges and make friends across the room. Look, I'm actually proud that we've been able to improve this budget working together and get it to a point now where our group can support it and can accept it. I'm proud that we've brought forward spending that was proposed to happen anyway on buses, but not for another couple of years, brought it forward to this year when we have real crises in supported bus services right now. We can do something about that. I'm proud that we protected allotment holders. I'm proud that we brought forward that spending to the area committees under the new structure to be able to make real differences for the people that we all represent, particularly in those areas, as we heard earlier, where we just really haven't been able to do it over the last few years because the SIL money just isn't there. That makes a real difference. And I'm particularly proud for my own residents that I represent in Westbury-on-Trim and Henleas that we've been able to defer and hopefully put a stop to what would have been a real kick in the teeth for our high streets and shopping areas by introducing those parking charges. Those have gone, at least for this year. We'll keep working on the future, but that makes a real difference. And of course, you know, Joss, you talked about libraries. I spoke last week about youth services and about short breaks. We didn't get everything we wanted. Of course we didn't. Nobody got everything they wanted, but that's the nature of compromise. And I'm actually also proud of the process by which we've got here. You know, we've heard it referred to, there's been commentary about deals and jumping into bed and playing games for leaflet fodder. But actually what we've seen over the last week is all of it, well, most of us, came last week with our ideas of what we would like to see, of what we'd like to improve. We argued for them. And then over the last week, people across parties with different opinions, different priorities, have got in a room together and agreed on the compromises we can all make so that we can support each other and get things done and make the real differences
that these amendments and this budget will make. You know, that's not yielding to demands. That's not playing a game. This stuff is real and it matters. And actually, you know, I'm sorry guys, but if you'd chosen to participate, you could have been part of that. If you've chosen to sit on your hands and complain from the sidelines, well, that's what you get. You remain on the sidelines. And it gives me hope for the future, actually, and I really hope that you will join in the future, because in a couple of months' time, under the committee system, people working across parties, getting in rooms together with different opinions, different priorities, and coming out with a solution is what we're all going to need to do. And I think we can do it, and today proves it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd now like to call on Councillor Andrew Brown to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. We're not going to oppose this, but we do have some reservations about, well, we've got lots of reservations, I've got lots of reservations about the process that's led us to today. And I think, in common with other people in this room, I think we probably do need to reflect on that for next year, particularly with moving into the committee system and how we work together in a more efficient and effective and cooperative way. With regards to the amendment itself, we have some we're not going to oppose it on the basis that it does put money into supported buses, which was one of the things that we wanted to support last week. We do have some reservations. We feel that spending £1 million this year might be a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. We have some reservations about money coming out of supported buses over the longer term of the CAS funding stream and being redirected, but we recognise that the CAS funding will be reprofiled at least once more, if not every year between now and whenever that stops. So we recognise that. We are disappointed that no money has been found for libraries. We know the libraries are still struggling. Whitchurch Library in my ward was shut yesterday or the day before. It was shut at the weekend. It was shut last week. So we know that the library service is still struggling, and we think that we're disappointed that no measures have been brought forward to look at how that service is supported to get back on track following the recruitment freeze. The Councillor Clark has talked about the budget process in terms of what's happened since last week, and I think, more ideally, we'd have all sat down, or all groups would have sat down and had a more thorough conversation about what could be done to get something through today that was acceptable to the whole chamber. That said, we're not going to oppose this today. We're going to abstain. We recognise that the administration has made some moves from where it was at last week to recognise what was voted on in the chamber last week at the last meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to call on Councillor Gary Hopkins, if you wish to speak again on behalf of the Knoll Community Party.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think one thing that we need to all bear in mind is that when we actually get to after May, there's going to have to be cooperation, and there's going to have to be working together. I'm concerned at the style of this administration, and that is a concern as well as some of the actual things that it's done. I remember basically with the, although we are a council that is short of money, that when we were blowing £1 million a month on Bristol Energy and we brought forward proposals for an independent investigation of that, all the Labour members, and there was enough of them at the time to do it, blocked that and actually carried on spending £1 million a month for no benefit at all. We eventually got the outside auditors involved and got it sorted, but a lot of money was wasted in the meantime. When we get to May, we're not going to surely leave it until next budget to review everything, because if we do, we will be carrying on spending lots of money which are not the priorities for the new administration, whatever mix that actually comes out to be. So we're going to have to look at that. I think also some of the, the amendment about the the allotments proposal, I think, again, the illustration of how that's actually happened illustrates some of the problems. There's a lot of backpedaling going on now with regard to the allotment charges. I don't think quite as much of it would have been necessary if there hadn't been these ridiculous proposals which got withdrawn partway through, which so angered the allotment holders as well as the actual costs. We all know that costs have got to go up. There's got to be a movement towards reducing the deficit on that account. But insulting the allotment holders was not the way to go about getting cooperation. And that's very sad indeed that that actually happened. I can't understand how that was allowed to go out from this administration without being properly checked first. And it's unfortunately not the first time that sort of thing has actually happened. So I look forward to working with others to improve our bus services, to improve investment in our local parks, and providing a little bit more of what people actually need and regard as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I'd now like to call on Councillor Zoe Goodman to speak.
Thank you. Back in autumn 2022, I'd already decided not to stand again as a councillor. This was after Liz Truss had crashed the economy and Rishi Sunak had been brought in as an unelected Prime Minister and announced new spending constraints. And Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer said in response that if they formed a Labour government, they would respect Rishi Sunak's spending envelope and there would be no new money for public services for at least the first few years of government. As a member of Resources Scrutiny Committee up to December last year, I would see the budget proposals each year and also the in-year spend against budget, and each meeting felt more depressing than the one before. What's really clear is that there's not enough money being provided by central government to operate the services that most of us in this House would like to provide. The Council is constrained by the amount it can increase rents for council housing and increase council tax. So central government both reduces the amount of money provided and constrains local government from raising funds. The most we can do is shuffle funds around. We know there's not enough money for the dedicated schools grant for general education, but also to provide support for struggling children, particularly those with special educational needs or disabilities, and those who've been excluded or are at risk of exclusion. We can't keep failing children and not providing them the services that they need and that we want to provide them. For housing, there's so much more that we could do if we weren't constrained by central government constraints on what a council can and can't do. Everyone deserves a safe, warm home in good repair. And for general funds, year on year, service heads are asked to make cuts or to make efficiencies. Staff deserve not to be continually overstretched, trying to deliver the same services with fewer people. And for these reasons, I cannot support this budget and will be voting against. This is not to disregard the professional advice of officers. I know how hard they work to provide information to us. As small and insignificant as I am on my own, this is to be part of a signal to central government and the opposition parties that local government needs more money. I cannot stand by and watch this repeated squeeze happen year after year. I call on all councillors in this chamber to campaign and press on their national parties the need to increase local government funding. We need the promise of hope for sustainable budgets to be able to provide the full range of high-quality services Bristolians so badly need. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. So that is the end of the debate. Marvin, would you like to respond to the debate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. So a lot has been talked about collaboration. I just think it's worth just sharing. The definition of collaboration isn't we're not playing if you don't do it our way. Right? It's incredibly important to bear that in mind as we do move into a committee system. And just a bit of advice, just off Hopkins, Councillor Hopkins' language. If you do want to create a culture where there are negotiations and collaborations, then it is probably worth thinking twice before pulling the political bingo trigger, in which every time someone listens to you and responds, you call it backpedaling, U-turn, because it won't create an environment in which you can have those conversations of trust. And actually, from all sides, I've seen whenever someone listens, they're straight on Twitter. Look what we've won. We beat them. This, that, and the other. It's just human nature. It's not even political insight, right? It's just what it means to build trusting relationships. And culture is going to be as important as your structure as you move into a committee system. Just to emphasize as well, this is not a game. The point I made about the pantomime earlier on is this is not a pantomime. This is reality. It's not blue pill, red pill time. This is a world in which people's lives are in crisis now. The stakes are high, not just for the council, but for the wider city. Right? Our universities, our private sector, our unions, our voluntary sector need us to bring a budget. And actually, if you're paid and you sit in this chamber, it's your responsibility to live up to the level of expectation that's upon us. I also just want to share, really, again, there is no other financial context. We have conversations about finance with national government every week through core cities, LGA, LGIU, through think tanks. So that is an ongoing piece of work. But leadership has the ability to make decisions in the imperfect world in which we exist. It doesn't suspend its decision-making until the reality matches its wishes. And if you do that, you will never make a decision. And on that basis, you need to make a decision in this chamber, and obviously your group in particular in the Greens. Are you serious about leadership and governance, or are you content just to do protest and Twitter? If you're just about protest and Twitter, carry on as you are. If you're about governance and leadership, you need to get to grips with the reality of the world in which we are and decide to operate in that world. Otherwise, there'll come a time when protest is asked to lead and you end up catastrophes like you've had in Brighton, where at some point, your inability to make a decision means that services collapse, people end up disillusioned. That might be the inevitable journey. Look, and going back to Councillor Smith's point here, right? Negotiation is a world in which no one walks away from the table with everything they want. That's the way it is. And again, if you're holding out to get the perfect list of your demands and desires,
Sorry, Marvin,
you'll walk away. I will. You'll walk away with nothing. So we negotiate with the context in which we are in, because we can't have everything we want. We don't have adequate finances. We don't have the policy, space and support we want, but we negotiate with each other in that moment in time as well as parties. And we need to get up to speed with that incredibly quickly as we move into a new political system. Thanks.
Thank you. So we are now going to proceed to vote on the budget recommendations as per the report and as displayed on the screen. Firstly then, as Lord Mayor, may I ask Council to note recommendations A to F. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Okay, that has passed and has been noted. We now move to vote 1. This is recommendations G to O. I hereby move recommendations G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N and O. These are being shown on the screen now. I'd like to ask Councillor O'Rourke, as Deputy Lord Mayor, to second the motion.
I second.
Thank you, Paula. This will be an e-vote. Please ensure that you are in your allocated seats so that your vote is recorded accurately. You are voting on recommendations G to O, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. I'll tell you when you're able to vote. You can vote now, please. The votes are in. For 33, against 18, abstentions 10. So that vote has passed. Okay, just get over the page. We now move to vote 2. This is recommendation P related to the dedicated schools grant. I hereby move recommendation P, which is shown on the screen now. I'd like to ask Councillor O'Rourke as Deputy Lord Mayor to second, please.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Paula. Again, this will be an e-vote. Please ensure that you are in your allocated that your vote is recorded accurately. You are voting on recommendation P, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. Okay, the vote on the recommendation P related to the dedicated schools grant is 460 against 1. So that has passed. We now move to vote 3. This is recommendation Q related to the housing revenue account. I hereby move recommendation Q, which is shown on the screen now. I'd like to ask Councillor O'Rourke as Deputy Lord Mayor again to second the motion, please.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Paula. Again, this will be an e-vote. Please ensure you are in your allocated seats so that your vote is recorded accurately. You are voting on recommendation Q, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. And the results for vote 3, which is recommendation Q related to the housing revenue account, 460 against 1 and 0 abstentions. So that vote has passed. We now move to vote 4. This is recommendations R to U related to delegation of authority to make necessary technical adjustments upon receipt of settlements and clarifications. I hereby move recommendations R, S, T and U, which are shown on the screen now. I'd like to ask Councillor O'Rourke to second the motion, please.
I second.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All against say nay. Okay, that's passed unopposed. Thank you. I'm pleased to confirm that the 2024-2025 budget is in place. That concludes today's meeting. Thank you to all councillors and to all others attending. The next meeting of full council is on the 12th of March 2024. Please come along. It will be my last one.